3, 2.
Hey, good evening, everybody. This is Jeff with Junior Hockey Advisor. I hope you're all safe and healthy and happy and getting ready for the holidays. Different set, different room. I'm down in the den. We've got family and we've got relatives coming in. So my studio gets converted into more of a family space during this time. So I'm in the den doing the same thing I normally do, though. We got a lot to cover tonight. We're going to cover the World Juniors. We're going to get into this with a lot of detail, and we're going to have a lot of fun with it. I shouldn't say a lot of detail. We're going to get in it from a fan's perspective, but we're also going to look at a few things that are important, and there's some lessons to be picked up from this, from a parent's perspective, from a player's perspective, and we're really going to jump in later in the show into Cole Perfetti, one of the Canadian players, and we're going to talk a little bit about him. And that's really going to be interesting because we're going to listen to one of his interviews. That's going to be later in the show. That's going to be pretty exciting. We got a lot to do. Why don't we just get going and get this rolling? All right, for those that don't know me, I'm Jeff. I'm Jeff Colson. I'm with the Junior Hockey Advisor. I'm not a family advisor. I've been in this for 30 some odd years. As a manager, as an NCAA coach, as a owner, as a junior owner, as a coach in general manager. I've worn all the hats at some point or another, professional scout, doing different things. And the reason why we do this show is to talk about the process. We talk about how things work and why they work. We have some fun with it too. We try to answer your questions so you have a better understanding of how it works to go from youth to junior and junior to college. And remember, youth is broken down into many different categories, and we got plenty of videos online that you can look at about that issue. Juniors, there's many different ways to go about skinning the cat at the junior level. No path is the right way. I had a ton of calls this week, calls with you calling up and asking for help on things. And when I say you, our audience, and the biggest thing is no two calls are ever the same. No two times that we talk about the process are they the same. I'm not an advisor. My job is to put the process into perspective. My job is to give you some ideas and some statistics that let you know where to make your decisions at, and to make sure you're aware and educated in the process. Then if you choose to use an advisor, that's great. If you choose to work with your coach, your skills instructor, your mom and dad, it doesn't matter to me. What I want to make sure is you're informed and you're making great decisions. So enough of that. We got a lot to talk about. Well, let's start out with a couple things. I want to talk first about chatting back and forth today with Jacob. I know Jacob's on tonight, and Jacob is in North Carolina but has roots in Sweden, and brought up the issue of, hey, look, my son's coming up to those years of some decision making on where we're going to play. And Jacob's thought process was, hey, look, there's a chance that we can go back and play in Sweden. And it's a phenomenal idea. I wished every kid could play in a foreign country. If you're at minimum, if you're Canadian, at least get into the States to play for a year. If you're in the United States, at least get into Canada. But if you can play in Europe for a year, what a great experience for youth if they could do that. Now, across the board, in most situations, that is not the normal path. I can name a couple situations where Americans have left to go over and play in Europe instead of following the normal path being, juniors, prep school, Minnesota high school, and then moving back into juniors again if you're in prep or in your high school, and then moving on to NCAA Division I. It has been done. It doesn't happen a lot. Now, why this situation is interesting, because let's say, let's just make a for example of, let's say you're not USHL bound, or you're not in that caliber of potentially an NHL draft pick or an NHL player, but you're still a pretty darn good hockey player and you want to move on and play at another level. Okay, so there's a couple things. The first thing is if you do choose to go play in Europe, and that's something that's a great experience for you, and you want to do it. There's great leagues there. There's some good competitive hockey there. There shouldn't be an issue with playing competitively. But I would really recommend that if you make that choice, that you do some pre-homework first and you make sure that you're doing this as an announced move. And what I mean by an announced move is, laying your groundwork for the return back. So let's say I'm a 2004, 2005 in that birth years, or in those birth years. And I'd make that decision to leave and go play in Europe for a season. And this is my first eligible year for juniors. And let's say I make the jump over. I would make sure that every single college that's in my realm, Division I or Division III, and every single junior team gets an email from me. And I explain what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And the reason I would do that is, first of all, it's unique. Okay, first of all, you're standing out right there by doing that. Okay, it may not be what everybody does, but especially if I had roots in Russia, or if I had roots in Sweden or Finland, and family there, or I played there, or I grew up there, and had a chance to go back or have my kids go back and live with relatives, and then be able to come back and finish their juniors here. Why not? It could be a phenomenal life experience, let alone a hockey experience. But I think really the issue here is making sure that you set the table for the return. In other words, start the marketing process and start the conversation before you leave, so that when you do come back, or even when you're there and when you send information back, you're sending clips back, or you're sending emails as you're trying to find that fit for when you come back. I just do the homework first and put all the work in first, and then keep the process going during the run. It was a great conversation, a little chit chat back and forth on this, and I thought, wow, that's interesting. I want to talk about it tonight because it's not the normal path, but there really isn't that many normal paths that you think. You look at it, and that's why it's important when we talk about some of the World Junior situations a little bit later. But I hope that helped a little bit, I hope that kind of gives you an idea that if you do something that's unique, instead of thinking that it's going to hurt you, think how it can help you. Think about the half full glass and how you can actually turn that around and make it a positive. And what I mean by that is, hey, Sweden, that's great. Go. But make sure that you tell the story. Make sure that becomes part of your email campaign. And maybe if you're on social media with coaches and they're following you or you're following them, hey, make sure that story is out there and you're using that story to grow. So hope that helps. I hope that helps specifically with Jacob and his family, but anybody else is in that situation that's thinking about that, I sure hope that helps you a little bit on that. So, great. Sean just threw up some comments. I'll throw that on the screen while I'm saying hi to some people. Patrick in Toronto's on. Donna's on from Oak Lawn. We talked about Oak Lawn. Next time I'm in Chicago, I'm going to look up Oak Lawn. Greg's on from Amherstburg. If you don't know where Amherstburg is, it's just south of Windsor. So if you're in that area, stop by, say hi to Greg. Kelly's on from Seattle. Good to see. Mark's back from Bloomington, Minnesota. Good to see you, Mark. William's on from Hamburg, New York. Hey, good to see some Western New Yorkers representing on here. David's on from South Bend. Jeannie's on from Flint. Cousin Jeannie, good to see you. Rob from Chicago. And Richard's back in from the Long Island area, along with Charlotte and Ontario. And Charlotte, that's not good enough. Ontario, it's a big area. We got to be a little more specific there. We got to be able to hone in on that a little bit. So I know we missed some people. We got a lot on, but please, throw your name up. Let us know where you're at. Perry, thank you for coming in from Long Island. You look at the demographics of this show when we pull the Facebook page and we look at the numbers. I'm amazed at how many people watch this from the New York City metro area and the East Coast. I would have thought that this would have been just all, keep in mind there's, close to 10,000 people that follow us in different ways, between the Facebook discussion group, the Facebook page, and then following me in general. But if there's 10,000 people there, you'd think that the majority of it would be Toronto, Detroit, Boston, those types of areas. Minnesota, big, in that area. But we've got a huge number that are in Philly and New York City, and I just wasn't expecting that at all. So thank you for the people that are in those non-traditional markets. I sure appreciate you guys watching and following and being a part of this too. So Keith in San Diego on too. Let's jump in. I want to jump in first. Before we get to the World Juniors, I've been talking about this for a while. And this is about the BCHL and the numbers. And some people weren't really understanding, and I'm trying to scroll for my little BCHL symbol and see if I can find it here and put it up on the screen. I'll just use this one. Okay, there's the BCHL. So I wanted to kind of throw some numbers out for you so you can get a perspective of what has happened during this pandemic period. Last year, the 1920 season, 146 Americans were in the BCHL. There's 84 right now that are rostered, okay? All other countries, there were 6 players last year. There's 5 this year. So those all other countries, most likely those are kids that were born somewhere else, still have a nationality of, Russia or Czech or some other area, and but they actually live in Canada. And I think I researched 3 or 4 of them, and that's the case there. So, but it's interesting to see those numbers. And I want to throw up a couple other numbers for you. I want to look at the USHL. And I know I've got to have a USHL symbol here. I'll see if I can find it. If I can't, hey, that's okay. We all know what the USHL. There it is. But it didn't come up. Don't worry about it. All right, the USHL. USHL numbers. Last year, 54 Canadians. This year, 50. So it dropped, but not much. But where the significant numbers were, the next 2 categories, and it doesn't sound like much, but remember, the USHL is not a big league. There's not that many teams there. We're not talking, OHL team numbers. We're not talking, any other league sizes. The USHL is a very compact league. Russia, last year 11, this year 7. Sweden, last year 10, 2. So the Europeans did not come in, and the numbers were all, non-existent across the board after that. The AGHL, they don't have other people. They have a few Americans, but usually it's 35 to 50. Last year, 35. This year, 23. And from what I'm looking at, a lot of those are in Brooks because if you're in Brooks, you're not going to, you want to stay in Brooks. You don't want to go anywhere else. So those Americans that were on the Brooks team may have tunneled over to get back to play. And that's Okotoks, Brooks. Some of those teams are just phenomenal programs up there. And those programs, the top 3-4 teams in the league are just as good as anybody else anywhere. And the league's a very solid league. But you're going to find any way to get back up there and finish up your junior career if you're a part of those teams. So let's look at the North American Hockey League and talk about the effect of the pandemic on them. Canadians last year 50, this year 40. But it's the Europeans where the real difference was in the North American Hockey League. Last year, 20 Russians. This year, 4 Russians. Swedish players last year, 22. This year, 8. So the significant difference in the league is a little bit less on the Canadian side, but a real big difference on the European influence. And this is all common sense. We've talked about this before, but I wanted to give you hard numbers because we kind of just said, yeah, that's happening, but we've never really hit it with hard statistical facts so that you can actually say, hey, you learned something tonight. So, man, I'm big on the screen tonight. Sorry about that. I'll have to adjust that later on. And once again, different room, different background. The fireplace there. No stockings. We don't put the stockings up on this fireplace, just so you know. It's not that we're Ebenezer Scrooge around here. I should have thought about putting some stockings up on this one, but hey, what I did do this year, I know I'm on an aside, but it's worth telling you. I went out and I bought a 5-foot Santa that sings Christmas carols, and I put it up in the living room. It's driving my wife and my daughter nuts right now, and it's a blast. But it's got like 40, 50, 60 songs that it sings. You can actually karaoke with it, and the little Santa dances, but he's huge. He's a tall guy. So I'll put him on next show so you get a chance to see him, or I'll throw it up on the discussion group. But if you want to annoy your wife and your daughter with Christmas cheer, buy a huge Santa that sings and has a really deep voice. They'll love it for about 4 minutes, and then they won't love it anymore after that. And it's motion detected and sound detected, so when you walk in the room, he just starts dancing and singing. And just a thrill for me. Maybe not so much for the rest of the family, but I'll make sure I put him up so you guys get a chance to see him. Anyway, I want to finish these numbers. CCHL, 65 last year, U.S. players in the CCHL. This year, 47 players. Saw a little bit of a dip there. And remember, the CCHL is got a border presence with New York. It's got a little bit of a border presence with you could say a little bit of border presence with Pennsylvania. It's not that far. Michigan's not that far. But all others, about the same, 6 last year for all the other countries, and then 4 this year. The NCDC, now everybody thought that the NCDC, because they're not USA controlled and they have a broader ability to bring in European players and Canadian players, that they'd be just stocked full. Well, last year, the Canadian presence in the NCDC was 32 Canadians. This year, that number dropped to 20. Russian players, last year 10, they're down to 5. And Swedish players, 10 players last year, down to 2. So once again, the Canadian decrease in the U.S. teams is significant, but is nowhere near the drastic decrease of European players in all the leagues. That's where you're really seeing the numbers. So thought I'd share those stats with you, give you a little bit of an idea of what the real numbers look like. And so enough of that. We'll get on to some other things. Let's see who else is on while we're changing gears here. Hey, Tony's on from Rockford, Illinois. Thanks for coming on, Tony. We've got just a chock full of stuff to get into. Now let's talk a little bit about the World Juniors. First thing is, let's just take the broad picture, look at the odds. Okay, this is the odds of who's going to win this thing. Who's gonna make it happen in Canada. If you bet $100. You're going to get back 130 on Canada right now. If you bet $100 on USA, you're going to get back 375 if they win. So you can see that Austria, the odds are 10,000 or what are they going to be, 1,000 to 1. They're going to win. You bet $100, you're going to get back $10,000. So it's not good odds for them. Germany, not much better odds. Slovakia, not so good odds. But that's your odd sheet. So, Canada hands-on favorite to win this thing. And we've talked about this already on the show. We've talked about how stacked they are. I think we had 26 first-round draft picks that tried out for the team. Now, there's other draft picks that are on there too. Let me see if I can throw this up for you, if I can get this up.
Now listen. I want all of our friends and family to share.
Sorry. I'm trying to get the let's see if I can pull this up. There we go. There's my World Junior page. So just not everybody follows the World Juniors. If you're in the United States and you want to follow the World Juniors, how do you do it? Well, you can watch it on Hulu. In Canada, turn on the TV. It's as easy as it is. You just turn on the TV, it's going to be on. So what are the teams involved this year? There's your teams that are involved. Austria, Canada, the Czech Republic, Finland, Germany, Russia, Slovakia, Sweden, Switzerland, and the U.S. team. How does that break down? Well, they're breaking into 2 divisions, and it's round-robin play. Starting on Christmas Day, you're going to see round-robin play every day, and this goes on, I believe, for maybe 2 weeks, a little less than 2 weeks. So they'll all play each other. Then after round-robin play, you see the bottom team in each division drop. Now, it used to be they had to play again. So if you were in the bottom of division or the A division, you played the bottom of the B division, and then whoever lost that game was not invited back to next year's World Juniors. You basically had to play in to stay in. But that's not the case this year. They're not going to do that. This is all – we're on uncharted territory as far as this is going on. But so these are your divisions. After you get the 4, then what happens is – the number 1 team from A will play the number 4 team from B. 2 from A will play 3, and it's basically a crossover. Semifinal and finals till you get, or quarterfinals and finals until you get to the end with the championship game. So that's how it breaks down, so you can see how it looks. And if you've never watched the World Juniors before, first of all, there's no NHL. Why not? Why not get involved in watching this and getting involved with World Juniors? It's a great brand of hockey. You are going to literally see the stars of tomorrow. And in some cases, some of these guys right after World Juniors may be on rosters, NHL rosters immediately. That's how much talent's in the World Juniors. Clearly, the 2 teams that are stacked the most are Canada and the U.S. You should expect that, but if we go back and look, I want to show you again one thing, because the thing that's tough about this is look at Canada's division and remember what we said about the odds. Switzerland, Slovakia, and Germany, not hot odds. Now, in Division B, you've got Russia, Sweden, and the U.S. Those are all teams that are expected to be in the fight, in the running for this thing. To give you a little bit of perspective on this from what the last 4 or 5 years looks like, the last 6 years. The last 6 years, Canada has won it 3 times. The U.S. has won it once. Finland has won it twice. Okay, but let's keep in mind one thing. Canada won it last year, but they've never, in the last 2 times out, they have not won it on home soil. So expect to see, Canada, fighting on home soil. Now, this is interesting with the pandemic. Things are different. The bubble, the way things are going, you probably won't have that same hometown feel, and you won't have the crowd that's bolstering you as much. And not every player is from Saskatchewan or Alberta. I think this is in Red Deer. So Red Deer, Alberta? I forget. I know it's a WHL. I believe it's, I'd have to look and see where Red Deer's at. I think it's just north or south of Edmonton, if I'm not mistaken. If you're on there and you know where exactly, I've been there, but I can't remember exactly where it's at. Tell me where Red Deer's at. I've got some Canadian people out there. Jump on it. Help me out here. But let's keep in mind, too, in the last 5 years, one program has been either a gold medal, silver medal, or bronze medal finalist all 5 years, and that's the U.S. program, 5 years in a row. Okay, only Russia is pushing close 4 out of the 5 years they've been in the medal round or finished with a medal. Canada, only 3 of 5 years. Now, they're the defending champion, and they're the odds-on favorite. But they're of the powerhouses, they're probably the most inconsistent of the powerhouses. So a lot of pressures on Canada this year. I mean, my money would be on Canada. Obviously, the odds makers in Vegas, the money's on Canada too. But this is interesting to see. Now, the reason I said look at the divisions, because it's chock full on one side, and that's the side where Russia and the United States and Sweden are at. Canada may have the easier path to make it to the playoffs and actually set themselves up by being the highest finisher in the tournament in their round robin play, so they get the lowest seed on the other side. So Red Deer and Edmonton. So I was right about that, just a little bit south of Edmonton. I appreciate you coming on, Sean, with that. And I did not know they were also playing the games in Edmonton. I thought they were just bubbling around Red Deer and the WHL stadium there. But thank you for that. I appreciate Sean coming on and help me out with that a little bit. So last few years, the winners, 2020, Canada, 19 Finland, 18 Canada, 17 USA, 16 Finland, 15 Canada. But this is really coming down. It's going to be the same teams that are going to be in the last 4 or 5 teams that are in the fight for this. We know that. It's going to be Canada. It's going to be Finland. It's going to be the U.S., it's going to be Russia, and probably Sweden will be up there too. That's your normal contenders. Everybody else, thank you for coming out and thank you for playing. Now, let's talk a little bit more about this in detail. I really want to share with you, and when I say detail, I want to try to relate it back to our show and what our players, meaning parents and coaches and managers and anybody involved in hockey, that are not at the World Junior stage, what we deal with. And every one of us that's got a kid or a coach has had to deal with a kid that's been cut. And I wanted to put this interview on because I think this interview is absolutely, absolutely something to listen to. And this is the Cole Perfetti interview. Now, it's a couple minutes long. Bear with it. I think it's 3 minutes long. But pick up some things he's saying here. Now, I'll tell you a little bit about Cole, and I'll give you some background on Cole right now. Let me see if I can pull up a share screen with this again. If I can't, then I won't. I'm trying to share with you right now. Let's see if I can do that. Okay, so this screen is up. Let me just move over here and pull up Cole. This is Cole Perfetti. OHL player, 02 birth year, from Whitby, good Canadian kid, not a big kid, 5'10", solid 185 left shot. Winnipeg's got him. First round pick, 10th overall. Okay, that's what I really want you to know about Cole before we get on with this interview piece. Know that this is a kid that's this is a stud. This is a kid that's a first round draft pick. But I want to hear what he has to say on this. So stick with this, and we'll chat about this as soon as we're done. 3 minutes. Hang in there.
As you're going through this process this year, I'm wondering how much you thought back to what happened last year and getting cut at the selection camp.
Yeah, I think it was a big thing for me, motivation. I never wanted to feel that again, and being cut definitely sucks, and especially on this team. And I had that experience last year, and I never wanted to have that again. So I did kind of everything in my power through the rest of the year in Saginaw, through this off season, and in preparation to come to this camp and do whatever it takes to make this team. So there was a lot of thinking back to last year and last December and not making the team, and you're definitely using that as motivation and drive for this year.
I know Mikey DiPietro, when he was coming back after getting cut, he'd set his phone throughout the year, got cut, to remind him every few days or whatever, just to remind him. How do you do that? Do you force yourself to think about it on some nights, like when you're maybe feeling a little sluggish? Like, how does it manifest itself for you?
Yeah, I think it's kind of just stuck in my brain. Like, that was the first time I've ever been cut from anything, really. So that it doesn't sit well, especially I don't know. I just remember it. Whenever I need a boost, I just think about that. Or even there's stuff year round about Hockey Canada that you see, and World Junior stuff like that. So you always get constant reminders of you didn't make that team, and you got to make it this year. So I had that all year round, and kind of just used it in my head, and external forces to kind of drive me.
I was reading that you didn't watch the gold medal game last year. You couldn't kind of bring yourself to know that you were in the mix for it. Did you watch any of the World Juniors last year?
Nah, I mean, not really. It's tough. You grow up being a Canada fan and a die-hard kid. We're sitting by the TV every year watching the games and celebrating with the team when when they score, and being so close and then being falling short, and every time I tried watching the first game, and every time I looked at the screen, it was just constant reminder that I got cut, and it's hard to do that to yourself and kind of sit through the pain. So I just I kept up with it on Twitter and stuff, but I didn't really watch it and couldn't bring myself to watch it, knowing I was so close to that team and coming up short.
You certainly seem to be at your best when you have that chip on your shoulder. You're really motivated. So you've made the team now. You've been put in a pretty prominent role with considering your line mates. What's fueling you now? What's driving you as you get set for this tournament?
Yeah, I think, there's lots of things that will drive you. I think the biggest thing is a gold medal. That's my dream, and it has been that since I was little, watching Team Canada win gold, and I've always wanted to do that. So I think that's the biggest thing, but then there's a lot of things externally that will drive me, and one might be the draft. There's 8 teams that picked, and I want to prove to all the guys that are here in this tournament that I'm just as good or better than them, and I want to play my best. And every game I go out there, I just want to be the best player on the ice and make a difference. So I'm just going to use that as my motivation. And but I think the biggest thing, it's pretty easy and self-explanatory, is a gold medal.
Wow. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this, and let's break this down a little bit. You may not have felt what I was feeling about that. I hope you did, but I got chills listening to this kid talk. First of all, thanks to TSN for that clip, and thanks for that interview. That's from TSN. Cole Perfetti. Okay, think about this. This is a top 10 NHL draft pick that got cut last year from the World Junior team. This is a kid that for the last 4 or 5 years has been on top of the world. Everything he's touched has been, it's the Midas touch. It's golden in the hockey world. And, we've all experienced this with the great player at Squirts. It could be house, it could be travel, it could be high school. But you see what that anointed kid is like. The one that can't do wrong and does everything right. And that's not a slam. There are kids that are just great athletes, and they just fit the role and this move up the ladder, and it seems effortless that while they're moving up. But I hope you heard a couple things there. First of all, they talked about motivation from getting cut. This is a kid that's never been cut. He's been great for years. He's been on top of everything for years. Now you get cut as a number or a first-round draft pick. Now, granted, he got drafted after the cut, but he was still projected to be a first-round draft pick before the last year's World Juniors. But to get cut from that team and to be on this path of ascension, and all of a sudden, one of the things if you're a Canadian, playing on the World Juniors is much more of a goal than playing in the United States. Now, it's getting closer, but United States hockey players don't grow up with that World Juniors over the holiday period being such a big part of their life. We just don't have it televised. We don't have that national sport across the board in all of our areas. Yeah, you're in the certain markets, yes, the World Juniors are popular, but it's not the same. But for a Canadian boy that's on top of the world to get cut like that and to have everybody, every eye in hockey on him knowing that, I mean, think of the dark cloud that has to be hanging over his head when he got cut. Okay, and you could think, I know some of you are going to be naysayers and think, who cares? He's going to be making millions, and what does it matter? He was still a kid that got cut when everybody had these high expectations for him. But I hope you heard, how he handled this. Didn't want to watch it, just wanted to prepare for it. Didn't want to, sit and talk about it, just wanted to prepare for it. But did you hear towards the end of that interview, probably the most powerful thing I heard in that interview, and it was just amazing to me that he said this, was he said, there's 8 other teams that I want to prove how good I am, not only to those teams, but to those players. In other words, because he was the 10th, and I think he probably wanted to say 9, but maybe he's got a buddy in the 9 that got drafted before him that he doesn't really worry about. I don't know. But what he's talking about is those teams that passed him over. He wants to prove to them that he thinks he's just as good or better than the rest of those other guys that were drafted above him. He wants those teams and those players to know that he's right there or better, and that's a driving force. Yes, he wants to win that gold medal, but holy smokes, you think that somebody that's a top 10 pick would be sitting back and resting on their achievements, or maybe you think that way. Obviously it's clear that he doesn't think that way, but what a powerful statement. He's going into this going, I got cut, okay? Reality check, I got cut last year. Now, we can all relate to that. We can all relate to that from our kids playing high school sports or juniors or whatever the case may be, and it puts it into perspective. This is something that happens from the top levels on down. I can tell you story after story after story about World Juniors on the USA side of great players that have just owned the world thinking they're a shoo-in for the team, and putting their tail between their legs when they left and not making the team. Now, this story though, I hope, give me your comments on this. I'd love to hear what you think about this, and see if you think about this the same way I'm seeing this. But my hats are off to Cole. My hat's off to how he was brought up and how he's handling this situation. And my hat's off that he's bound and determined to prove something on this. Now, this story could be with 30, 50, 100 other athletes that are playing in the World Juniors. I can't tell you that. I got that interview. I pulled it because I thought it was special for how we look at things at Junior Hockey Advisor and how we talk about the process. Just because you're cut at U15 team, hey, that could be great motivation. Yes, you might seem to think that the whole world is looking at you because your kid gets cut from Honeybaked or Shattuck or the NCDC team is first year junior. But to put it in perspective, think of what the difference is and how much easier it is to talk about this with your kids when you can say, hey, that kid's a first-round draft pick, and he got cut, and he stuck with it, and he came back stronger because he got cut. He didn't hide. He didn't, not own it. He owned it, and actually turned that interview into his coming out party, saying, "Hey, look, I'm putting it right out here. I want to prove to everybody I'm just as good. I'm not, I think about the time when your kid or yourself, you're on the fourth line or in the stands as a college player, as a junior player, as a high school player. And, you knew you were just as good as other players. It's a matter of, keeping the attitude, keeping the faith, and keeping the work until that opportunity opens up. His opportunities open up. He made the team this year, and let's see if he goes out there and does what he says. I wish him all the luck in the world. Obviously, I'm going to be rooting for the U.S. program, But I sure hope it's U.S. Canada, and the U.S. can win, but I sure hope Cole has a great performance in this and comes out on top for his team there. That'd be really good. Tell me what your thoughts are on that. I'd love to hear what you're thinking on this as we discuss this. Now, some other news on this is going to be kind of weird. Sweden lost their coach because of COVID. They lost some players because of this that went down with COVID. They decided to stick into this. The bubble is working. There are some issues with this. A lot of the pre-games now, normally we'd see a lot of ramp-up games where you could kind of get some idea where they're going to still have a few games, but nowhere near the normal pre-tournament litany of games. Usually each team's playing 2, 3, 4 games to get ramped up and get ready for this. We're only going to see a little bit of light action, but going into this, a couple of things. I think there was 6 games already canceled for this in Germany, not Sweden. Sweden lost their coach. Germany lost 8 players, but they posted positive COVID results. They're still going to move forward on this, so that's good news. Really, the first day right out of the gate, the big game to watch is going to be on Christmas Day, and that's going to be Russia-USA. Let's see how Russia comes out of the gate. Let's see how the U.S. comes out of the gate. The U.S., they've got just a tad off the amount of talent that Canada does. And what I mean by that is, where Canada is chalked with first-round picks, the U.S. only has about half of the amount of first-round picks, but they've got a lot of guys that were 4th or 5th down the list right out of the first-round, second-round picks. So on paper, the U.S. may not look that strong, but I really think they've got a shot to prove some people wrong on this. I wanted to mention a couple things about this. Oh, the guys to watch in the U.S. program, obviously watching Cole Perfetti is going to be great, but I'll throw a couple names to watch out for on the U.S. squad, especially if you like Division I college hockey. If you're a college hockey fan, you got to watch Cam York. Does he have the same kind of ability that a Quinn Hughes has? No, he's not. He's not Quinn Hughes. And if anybody knows who Quinn is, he was also a University of Michigan defenseman, much more refined as far as his flamboyant rushes. He's much more noticeable. Cam's not the same player, but he is their top D, and he's going to be offensive, and he's going to make some heads spin in the way he plays. Cole Caulfield is another kid that's coming back, and they've got a great goalie with Spencer Knight that's coming back. He's a Boston College kid. All these kids are first-round draft picks. If, for some reason, Spencer Knight isn't on his game, they've got 3 goalies. They can come right back with Dustin Wolf from the WHL and still have some great players. And so let's watch and see how this plays out. Christmas Day, jump in. Once again, if you're in the U.S., I know that I believe when I've had to watch it for actual scouting purposes in the past, I believe I used Hulu. I think it's on Hulu. Hulu seems to have some Canadian content in the first place, but I believe that's where you can get the games in the States. If you know more than that, let me know. Throw some notes up on that, and give me some comments if you got any players you want to talk about on this. Now, hey, look, we've been going at this for a while already. Let me know what your thoughts are about the World Juniors. Are you going to watch? Give me some comments on if you're going to watch or not. I highly recommend you do, especially since we're limited on what we can watch. You're going to see the window open up for the holidays, where you see very few games played in the NCAA ranks. So if you're one that likes to watch college hockey, you're limited during that period of time. I don't even know. It's a great question. I haven't even looked into to see if the Great Lakes Invitational is being played over the holidays like it normally is being played. That's where Michigan State, and then 2 other teams from any college that's borders the Great Lakes are invited. So I don't even know if it's going on this year. If you know, throw some comments up there. I'd love to see what you think about that too. But if you don't have college hockey, why not watch the World Juniors and get a little bit of a head start on building some loyalty to some of these players as they grow into your teams. Philadelphia's got a ton of players. There's so many teams. The Islanders have got a ton of players. But there's just across the board, you're bound to find somebody. If you got an NHL team you like, you're bound to find somebody that's on one of these World Junior teams that's a draft pick for your team. If not, just find a player. Root for your country. Root for your NHL team. Root for what college these players are coming from. Boston University, Boston College, Minnesota, and the University of Michigan. I think Michigan had the most with 5 players in this, but there's a ton. And if you're an OHL fan or a WHL fan or a Q fan, tons of players from those 3 leagues too. It's going to be great to watch. It's going to be a lot of fun. Highly recommend you jump in with both feet on this. So tell me what you think. If you got any thoughts on this. Otherwise, that's about it. I wanted to give you a little bit of a preview of what's going on. I wanted to talk about Cole Caulfield. I wanted to talk about those junior leagues and give you some real numbers on that. We talked a little bit about if you decide to go off the beaten path and to go into a different direction. And that's all I had tonight. We still filled up 45 minutes of show. So anybody else jump on if you got any comments. Otherwise, we're going to call it quits here. Let's see. Oh, this one's worth throwing up here. Sean, you're on fire tonight. Watching the World Juniors is a family tradition. I think this year's tournament is Canada's to lose. Hoping we repeat, but can't look down on Team USA, Russia, Sweden, and sometime the Czechs surprise a few people. Amen. Yeah, you're preaching the same tune there. Glad to see that you're going to watch this and follow Sean's lead on this. Sean, did I say Shane earlier? If I did, I'm sorry, Sean. But once again, family tradition in a lot of Canadian households. It's like if you grew up in Michigan, if you grew up in Detroit, what do you do on Thanksgiving? You watch the Lions lose, okay? For other families, you watch Canada win the World Juniors over the holidays, Christmas Day and Christmas Eve and through the holiday period through New Year's. That's what you do. So I appreciate everybody watching. Unless we got anything else, happy holidays to all of you. Merry Christmas to all of you. We're not sure if we're going to broadcast next week. We might take the week off. But we'll let you know ahead of time so anybody that wants to watch live. Of course, this is a great time to catch up on some old video. It's a great time to go back through the archives. I'm pulling things up off the last year. For those of you who know the story, it wasn't even a year ago that we really blew up with all this. And a lot of it's pandemic related because there were so many people that were available. But we've built just this huge following and this huge audience from virtually nobody. And I know one of our loyal watchers is Dave Kennedy. Dave was one of the first on board and is still there watching every week and responds to a lot of things on our discussion group. But now when we used to have tens of people, we have tens of thousands of people involved with the replays and everything's growing. And it's a lot of fun to do this. But I'm going to be putting up stories that have been stories that we've talked about over the last year. Please do the same thing. If there are things that you liked about hockey or didn't like over the last year, go on the discussion group and repost something or grab one of the things we talked about earlier, throw it back up and let's chat about it and remember some of the things that were good and bad about the year. I think we all agree we want to get on to the next year, but let's not forget this is a hockey season that's still got a lot of great hockey to be played. With the World Juniors, the NHL is about to start back up. College hockey's going, and we can still finish strong with this. We can still have a great few months of hockey with this. I wish you all the best. Happy New Year to everybody. I'll show you Santa, and everybody have a great night, and take care.
Now listen, I want all of our friends and family to share this on Instagram and TikTok.